Hello, I'm Sharon Ferris, Director of Marketing at CEREC. On behalf of CEREC, I'd like to welcome you to the webinar. Today's webinar is the second in a series of 5 webinars this week, where we'll be exploring impressive career service models at universities and colleges across Canada. For the next hour, we are delighted to have Dr. Peter Dietsche and a panel of career service leaders discussing the theme of collaboration. Before we go any further, some quick housekeeping notes to get us started. If during today's webinar you have any questions, please enter them in the chat box that you see on your screen. Peter and our panelists will respond to them towards the end of the webinar. And if your question is for a particular panelist, then please just note that in your question and we'll direct it towards them. Then on Friday, we will email you copies of all the slides as well as the recordings of each of the 5 webinars. We are active on social media, so we encourage you to engage online as well using these Twitter hashtags and handles that you see on your screen. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today. Peter is the recently retired Davis Chair in Community College Leadership at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto, and the one responsible for the impressive career service model research you're hearing about all this week. And our panelists today are Jan Basso, the AVP of Experiential Learning and Career Development at Wilfrid Laurier University, Vicki Chio, the Coordinator, Learner Engagement and Employment at Bow Valley College, and finally, Christine Frigo, the Coordinator of Career Services at Mount St. Vincent University. I welcome and thank you all for joining us, and I will now turn it over to Peter to lead us off. Peter.
Thanks very much, Sharon. Just bringing up my slides. Just one point of clarification. While I was responsible for the research, the findings of the research are really a function of the input from the panelists that we are hearing today, and over the next 4 days, it was the career services professionals across the country who really delivered the very fascinating information that we're going to share throughout the rest of this week. So the theme for today is collaboration, as Sharon said, and then over the course of the next 3 days, we'll deal with other topics that derive from the 2 research reports that were published. The first really summarized the survey that we conducted online, and the second summarizes the interviews that we did with 15 institutions across Canada. The outline of the session is basically I'll introduce the theme, presenting some of the findings from those 2 reports. Then we'll do the introduction of the panelists, and then a fireside chat where I will pose 3 to 5 questions, depending on how much time we have, to the panelists for comment. So in terms of the findings for that support this notion of collaboration, one of the themes that we derive from the interviews and from the survey findings, what we found with the survey, basically, when we asked folks to identify what or rank order what they thought were the key components of an impressive model of career services, then we found 4 that came out on top. Evaluate services regularly, measures service outcomes, is proactive in service delivery, and then finally collaborates with campus stakeholders. So the survey responses derive from basically 67 institutions, colleges, and universities across Canada, elucidated these 4 key components for an impressive model. And when we looked at just some validation of that finding, when we looked at the degree to which these various institutions collaborated with other stakeholder groups on campus, and we separated out the top 7, those that were 1 standard deviation above the mean, and compared their collaboration scores, if you will, on a scale of 0 to 10. So you can see on the right-hand side, the mean scores of collaboration with each of the services listed on the left are higher in every instance compared to all other institutions. So it is the case that those institutions who scored as impressive models, 1 standard deviation above the mean on our impressive model scale, do collaborate significantly more than others in the sample. When we looked at the interview findings, Again, the collaboration theme came out time and time again. This is basically a summary of the findings, the thematic findings from our interviews across 15 institutions. And you can see that partnerships is the largest theme that came out. It was expressed in a variety of ways, collaboration being one word that was used, and partnerships being the other. And it's clear that both have to happen. If you're going to develop a partnership, you need to collaborate. So we collapsed those into sort of one dimension. The others that stood out were around meeting needs and developing a strategic plan. And we spoke about that in more detail yesterday. Those who wish more, who didn't participate in yesterday's, can go onto the SAREC website where both of the reports are posted. When we asked people about the key components of their model, again, the partnership theme came out over and over again, developing relationships and partnerships with in college partners. Try to go where the students are, collaborating with students. And then one particular institution had an individual whose role was to work with faculty and staff in the different departments, as well as student associations. So there was a very explicit intent on the part of that particular institution to have a staff member whose largely her role was to develop those partnerships in a very purposeful and intentional way. When we asked people what did they do in order to develop and implement their model, what strategies did they use, then again, relationship building, collaborate on programming, seeking out those who want to collaborate to make things happen, and especially meeting the needs. So it was a collaboration that was focused on the needs of the particular stakeholder groups across campus, whether that be faculty within a particular program, where they would put on an employer event, meet the employer, job fair, that sort of thing. And so the liaisons was around that particular topic, and a lot of time was spent focusing on the needs of particular stakeholder groups and then trying to deliver on those needs, which clearly then would reinforce the relationship and the collaboration. So that's a brief introduction of that theme and how it stood out on both components of the research project, that is the online survey. So that came out loud and clear in terms of the rank order of the characteristics of an impressive model. And then again, through the interviews, the partnership collaboration theme was expressed over and over again. So I'd like to turn it over now to our Fireside Chat panelists, beginning with Jan, and then moving to Vicki and Christine.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm excited about being able to participate in today's webinar. My name is Jan Basso and I'm the AVP of Experiential Learning and Career Development at Laurier. I've been in the field of delivery of career services in the post-secondary sector for over 40 years now, and all of them at Laurier. I was the first employee in the career services department when I started. Our department is a centralized operation with decentralized delivery, and we have 3 separate career centers at Laurier, and we deliver services on 5 different campuses. And so extensive programming takes place. We have 23 full-time staff in the department and about 20 students as well. And recently, I took on the role of experiential learning as well in conjunction with career development. And the total staff complement is now about 45 full-time plus student staff. Partnerships are fundamental to the way we deliver services in the Career Development Center. A number of years ago, we changed our name from Career Services to Career Development. And we talk about ourselves as career educators because we want to impress upon people that we are partners in the institutional mission of intellectual, professional, and personal development of students on the campus. Partnership is a key factor in our strategic plan. And every unit and every individual within the department has a mandate to develop partnerships and maintain partnerships throughout the campus. We deliver about 400 programs annually outside of all of the workshops we do as well. And 170 of those in 2016-17 were delivered in partnership with other people on the campus or other departments on the campus. 75 of them were with academic units or faculty members individually, and 67 with other types of departments like residents and alumni and those types of units. Partnerships are very important to us, so I'm happy to talk about them today.
Vicki?
Oh, so my name is Vicki Chio, and I'm the Learner Engagement and Employment Coordinator at Bow Valley College. I work with a fairly small team of 6 individuals with 2 career advisors, but we're uniquely in a co-located department where other student services are within our own department as well. So that includes counseling, financial aid, accessibility, the Library and Learning Commons, our Indigenous Center, our Academic Success Center. So there's lots of great opportunities for us to collaborate internally within our own department in student services, but also really the importance of partnering up with our academic departments too, because our experiential learning programming at the college is decentralized. So each health or business academic department has their own co-ops, work placement programs, and clinicals. So we really have to work extra hard, I think, to connect with those areas and bring that added value of having that career development and career education piece available and accessible to all students. Collaboration is a huge piece of the work that we do. Bow Valley College is Southern Alberta's largest comprehensive community college, but I think in terms of our team, we're fairly small, but we really try to utilize the people that we have, and the fact that we're situated within a larger learner success services department to our advantage. We have over 65 staff in our department, and just trying to reach out to 18,000 learners in our over 20 regional campuses too has certainly been a huge amount of work. But just continuing to work internally and externally with our stakeholders has been really key.
Thanks, Vicki. Christine?
Hey, hi everyone. I'm coordinator of career services at Mount St. Vincent University, which is a small, primarily undergraduate university. We're located in Halifax. We have about 4,000 students, so I guess we're the smallest of the 3 schools who are speaking today. And we are part of the Office of Student Experience, but in the summer of 2016, the Career Services Office was moved to be co-located where cooperative education is. So we're just down the hall from them, and this has presented some wonderful opportunities for collaboration, which I will be speaking about later on in the session today. As I manage a small career office with primarily student staff, I have found over the last 16 years that I've been in this role that collaboration is absolutely key to running a quality service for students, creating programming that's going to enable them to be successful. So we do collaborate very widely, both internally and externally, and I'm happy to speak about that today.
Terrific. Thanks, everyone. So we'll move to our first question, which builds on this notion of collaboration, which you've all emphasized in terms of your operational procedures. So which campus services or service have the highest potential for collaboration with career services? Or is there one, or are they all potentially collaborators? So we'll start with Jan.
So I think as I look around the campus, there are innumerable possibilities in terms of creating partnerships. But probably the key one for us is academic departments. And so we do a fair amount of work with academics and with individually and within their specific departments. So we do things like careers related to majors in terms of sessions and fairs that we might run in conjunction with them in areas like education, criminology, and science. We do a lot of work in terms of individual sessions around personality type, which is really informative from the faculty member standpoint to help students with group work, but it also really increases student self-awareness, which contributes to career decision-making. And we've done that in a number of classes, but social entrepreneurship is a good example of that one as well. We're doing career integrated learning where we're we're in about 30 classes this year, talking to students about the kinds of competencies they're developing in their coursework. We do work on resumes and CVs and further education in terms of specific sessions, graduate student programming, and we assist in terms of identifying employers that might be able to contribute to curriculum as well. We also do a lot of work with alumni relations, webinars. We partner with them on 10,000 Coffees, alumni career panels, residence life, because being able to get to first-year students is really important to us, to make them aware of what we're doing and help them understand how they can better connect with us. Enrollment services, in the last couple of years, we've contributed significantly to the work of enrollment services, attracting new students to the campus. So lots of possibilities there. And then on the administrative side, we work with human resources and partner around delivery of career-related services for our staff on campus. It contributes to their development, but it gives us a chance to showcase the work that we're doing, which then translates into referrals of students that they come in contact with.
Terrific. Sounds like you're everywhere, Jan.
We try to be.
Yeah, okay. So let's move to Vicki now.
I think when I was thinking of campus services and I'm looking at maybe the top 2 spaces that we try to focus on, I think one is partnering up with Student Life or the Student Affairs Department, because through that channel, we're able to be connected to students right from New Student Orientation Day or at the various learning boot camps that happen before New Student Orientation Day, but also being integrated into the other student life programming that happens throughout the year on campus that reaches the general student population, such as collaborating with our leadership programming or some of our experiential learning initiatives through volunteering in the community. So I think partnering up with the student affairs, student life areas of the college, especially because we're co-located with them and we have opportunities to work with them directly and reaching out to the general student population. And I think the other piece, because our experiential learning programs are decentralized in the different academic departments, that's another piece that we also really try to focus on too, is reaching out with those departments and programs that offer co-op and work placements and practicums and clinicals, and seeing the types of either workshops or employer networking events that we could do that are targeted, that can help to support their work in terms of building employer relations, but also preparing our students for that whole cycle of job search and interviewing and networking.
Oh, terrific. Thanks, Vicki. Christine.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we were co-located last year down the hall from Cooperative Education, and this did provide an opportunity over the past year to share a position that was focused on enhancing experiential learning programming opportunities for students. So that was a real success in that we were able to partner on that position. The other area that we're recently partnering on is that we're going to be launching the Orbis CRM system together with Co-op. We'll be using it for career services, co-curricular record, and cooperative education. Without partnering on this initiative, we just wouldn't have been able to do it. So when we look at what we're able to do together, it's certainly a lot more than what we could do in our individual offices. So that's an exciting opportunity for us here at the Mount. Another office that I partner with regularly would be alumni relations. I know that's been mentioned already. It seems to be a common theme. We know that the alumni offices want to start building relationships with graduates before they graduate. So they want to meet them while they're still students and get involved with them. So they do have a vested interest in partnering with career services on events. In fact, we're holding an event tomorrow on campus to help students build their LinkedIn profile. So we've invited an alumni guest speaker, and alumni are welcome as well. And we have students coming in who will hear from the speaker, who's an expert on social media and LinkedIn profile development. And we'll follow that with a LinkedIn photo shoot and then a session in the computer lab so students can have their LinkedIn profiles critiqued. So that's one example. We also hold an etiquette brunch with the Alumni Relations Department. So we invite, again, it's an alumni guest speaker who focuses on professional business dining etiquette. And so she comes in and does a session while the students are having a meal. And it's a great opportunity in an environment where the students get to practice their dining etiquette, and they do enjoy that. And we do as well have the alumni representation at every table with the students as well. So that's been a great collaboration. We do that usually in the spring of every year. Other areas that I've partnered with quite regularly would be specific faculties on campus. So this usually begins here on our campus. We started with the professional studies departments. Business and tourism department offers something called a learning passport, where students can attend professional development activities and they get bonus points towards their grades. So the professional development activities do include career services programming, and this has resulted in a tremendous increase in participation in the workshops that we offer. So we've actually been able to fill auditoriums with these workshops now, when 10 years ago when we offered them, we might get 5 or 6 students. So it's been a tremendous, tremendous increase in participation and resulting in increased participation in our career fairs and so forth. So that's been a real success. Other areas, of course, other parts of student experience, student union, we do try to focus on delivering tailored workshops, for example, to Aboriginal student services or things for accessibility or international student services. So there's definitely opportunity for collaboration there and with the Students' Union as well. A new area that we've started to work with a bit more in the recent year would be our Teaching and Learning Center. So we participated in their recent Teaching and Learning Showcase that was held here on campus, and we're learning to collaborate more with some faculty through involvement in that area. So that's a relatively new area that we've been starting to connect with a bit more. So I'm looking forward to further opportunities to collaborate.
Terrific. Thanks, Christine. So it seems the notion of co-location has come up a couple of times, and we'll come back to that a little later in terms of one of the other questions. Looking at the barriers to implementation. So one of the things that came out in terms of the theme from our interviews was this notion of faculty or staff attitudes and knowledge, that some on campus didn't understand the notion of career development and thought that career services was essentially about doing resumes, cover letters, and helping students get a job. And people were working toward trying to help the community understand that the career services is much broader than that. It's about career development, student career development. So the next question is, how then do we help stakeholders see career services as more than cover letters and resumes? So over to Jan.
So I think what's really key is we want to convey the message that we're the experts in all things career on the campus, and that we're willing to collaborate and share. And so I think the number one way for us is really helping people understand the value that we can bring and how we can meet their needs. And so what are their goals? How can we contribute? So is it to increase enrollment? Is it graduation success? Is it the education of students? Is it team building, because we could offer help there? Learning. Creating more student engagement through the classroom in career integrated learning, for example, in terms of highlighting the competencies that are being developed. What information can we provide to help people with advising? And so I think there's a lot there. With our office, we depend a lot on referrals. And so some of the sources for those referrals rest with students, and so student clubs, with the peers that are working in peer programs, with the resident staff. And so engaging those students through training and the work that we do, taking them through the whole self-awareness process, using things like personality type, and so that they can really understand the value that we have to offer, and then increase referrals. So it gives them personal benefit, but then also helps us there. I think making sure that we develop and make available resources to help people in their jobs. And so whether that's working with undergraduate advisors to help them with information around how to advise students on further education opportunities, making sure our web content is there. The other one is we clearly are the best people on campus in terms of connections to employers. And so being able to help all of the folks around campus with identifying employers that they might engage within their own programming, helping them in terms of potential access for sponsorships. I think we have to create meaning in terms of the work we do with the work that people are trying to do themselves within their own units.
Terrific. Thanks, Jen. Vicki?
I think echoing a little bit of what Jen said, I think two pieces that are really key to us is understanding and acknowledging the knowledge and industry contacts that other departments have, because we do have a decentralized model for work experience. So we don't necessarily have all the knowledge of industry trends or employers or contacts. So I think understanding where our stakeholders are coming from. I think sharing the importance and helping people understand what career development really means. I think that's been a really huge first step for us, so that people understand that it's not just about cover letters and resumes. And some of the things that we've been doing include, in Alberta, we have the Career Development Association of Alberta. I'm sure that every province may have something similar, but inviting folks who aren't necessarily in career advising roles to take part in those associations or learn more about workshops and conferences that come out of that field. So this could be our co-op placement officers or work practicum coordinators, inviting them out into that career development world a little bit, and just sharing a little bit about what we do, because there's a little bit of overlap, especially because we're not a centralized model. So we also make sure that we take the time to learn about the different roles in other departments, whether it's in the academic faculties or advisors or folks that work in our prospective student office, understanding what pieces of information that they share with students that may be related to their career development goals or choosing a program. And then I think the second piece is using verbiage that really matters to our stakeholders. Is it about connecting departments to industry and employers, right? Or is it about talking about networking and interviewing as a soft skill, rather than saying that, you know, when students come to see a career advisor, we can help them write a cover letter or resume. You know, we would inform them that we're also assisting students in developing their soft skills. Talking about things like helping students to master their personal brand. And when I talk about using that terminology, I think often of our School of Business especially too, and just understanding that different schools and programs, whether it's health or human services or business, they have a different perspective on what career development means to their students especially. So I would say those two pieces are kind of key as we interact with all stakeholders on campus and off campus too.
Right. Thanks, Vicki. Christine.
So I would agree with everything that Jan and Vicki have just outlined. And I'd also add to that, one area that we work at in helping faculty understand more about what career services does is I've tried to get into a number of department meetings. So I'll request to attend chairs meetings and give them a brief overview of career services. But I always stress that it is, you know, very much theory-driven, evidence-based services that we're providing, and then look for an opportunity to see how we can help them. So once they see what we can offer, see how we can help them. And then we've had the opportunity as a result to do some in-class sessions, for example, career options for history majors, or, you know, doing the strong interest inventory in a class session, or the Myers-Briggs type indicator, but just giving faculty that option and letting them know what we do, why we do it, and helping them see that it is evidence-based. And then certainly the respect develops from that, and the relationships are built after that as well. And then the word spreads, you know, the faculty tell one another about career services, and we do get referrals of students more likely from those departments as well. In fact, we had one department faculty last year who recommended that all their first year students in their introductory level course attend a career counseling session, which is fantastic. But then we have the issue of how do we meet that need and make sure that we're able to service all these students. But it's a good problem to have.
Terrific. Thanks, Christine. So I guess, I mean, what stands out amongst the three panelists in terms of their comments is this notion of helping campus stakeholders gain greater insight into the detail of what actually happens in a career services office. And it's not just, it's much, much more than cover letters and resumes. And certainly, again, the other dimension is trying to meet the needs of stakeholders as the partnerships are developed around the campus. The next issue that we're going to deal with in the third question is around creating institutional commitment. This was one of the things that stood out again, both in terms of the survey results and the interview themes that we analyzed, and the importance of aligning with the strategic plan. And that was one of the areas that people suggested would leverage commitment on the part of the institution, showing, graduate employment and the impact on enrollment, those kinds of things. I think Jan talked about that a little earlier, as well as engaging faculty and staff. So trying to engage the professoriate by showing how career service can strengthen the value of academia, so that the efforts and services provided by career services go hand in hand with the academic side of the house and reinforce it. Especially, again, people highlighted in our various interviews around the current labor market and what's happening there, and that helping graduates gain employment really reflects on the reputation and image of the institution, so that career services plays a major role in leveraging that for the institution, and that's one of the tactics that can be used. So the third question has to do with those tactics. What tactics develop and sustain collaboration with faculty and with administration to key stakeholder groups? So Jan?
Okay, so I think, and it's repetitious, but I think a commitment to meeting their needs. And how can we help them in conveying that message? I think quality programming is essential. I mean, if we fail there, we've lost them. I think the other really critical piece is to essentially never say no, to convey that can-do attitude and not turn people away, so that they know they can depend on you to engage with them. I think trying not to force it with people, because I think you can alienate faculty members particularly if they're really not interested and they don't buy in, not to try and push it. Because I think, as Christine said, eventually they will hear from their colleagues who have adopted career programming within their courses or whatever. I think showing usage and learning outcomes. So learning outcomes, I think, speak really highly with faculty. So measuring the success of your programs from the learning standpoint. Looking at student engagement surveys and user stats. For example, oftentimes I think career centers are perceived as being there to help students who are in business and engineering and computer science, but maybe not necessarily humanities and social sciences. So showing faculty and other people around campus how much work you do with students out of those particular faculties, and that the need really does exist. I think in working with people, if you can take the logistics burden off them, they're forever grateful. And so helping them with just some of the mechanics around programming is really helpful. The employer connections, again, I think are important, and we can connect a lot of people on the campus with the employer community. I think we can't ever give up on communicating with the campus campus community, so they know we exist. And I think the other piece, and I think it was Vicki that mentioned this, acknowledging their expertise, so they understand that we recognize them as experts as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Jan. Vicki?
I think in addition to what Jan shared, but I think our top two tactics would involve, I think, persistence and reminding ourselves that promoting and building awareness about career services to faculty and staff, it doesn't just happen one semester and you build those relationships, or you attend a coordinators meeting and then that's done. I think it's something that we have to be really mindful and persistent about every semester, and continue to build in time, and also communications that facilitate that constant awareness and promotion of what career services is on campus and what is offered. And then I think the other piece that's really key, if it's available in your institutions with executive sponsorship, that key piece of executive sponsorship, is building shared systems and processes. So something that we're piloting now, and Christine kind of spoke to it a little bit, is we're actually going onto the Simplicity platform, which is similar to what Orbis does. And career services and 6 of our academic programs will be using it to manage experiential learning, but also to launch our career services and online job board platforms. So I think being able to use those shared systems and technology is a really great piece for sustainability, and just continuously offering workshops and learning opportunities that support the student co-op and experiential learning programs. But that also means being continuously current and up to date on the different programming that's available to students in different faculty departments, and knowing which areas we can initiate support in, so that there doesn't necessarily have to be overlap. Letting departments know that there are certain topics that we can certainly facilitate to their students too, and that's a resource that's available on campus.
Terrific, thanks, Vicki. Christy.
Okay, thank you. So one area that we have tried to get more involved with faculty is by inviting them to join some of our committees. So I'll just give an example so people can see what I'm referring to. I chair a work study committee here on campus. It's called Student Works Program here at the Mount. But what it is, it's paid positions on campus. Many universities have this, but we need to evaluate the positions to determine which ones will be eligible for funding, because of course there's never enough funding to go around to fund every single position. So the committee evaluates the positions to look at the career competencies that will be developed, and to look at, the type of supervision provided, the types of learning outcomes that the student will achieve in the positions. And so I've invited faculty from different departments to be members of this committee, to let them know that we value their opinion. I mean, their fellow faculty members are applying for positions along with staff from various departments, and I've found it to be an effective way to build those relationships. And so that's rotating those faculty positions on that committee. I also do look for opportunities to join different committees myself. And so that's something that, again, puts career services into different areas of the university. I find it helps if you can be on committees where there are senior administration as well. An area that we've looked at in speaking to senior administration is trying to show them how our initiatives do impact, for example, student retention. So we evaluated our co-curricular record once it had been in place for 5 years, and worked with our institutional analysts to look at the retention data. And we were able to show that the co-curricular record participants actually had a 12% on average higher rate of retention than the overall university rate of retention. So that was a significant stat that we were able to share with them. And it also goes back to, speaking the language of your audience. So if I could just go back to what Jan said earlier on, with faculty focusing on learning outcomes, you're not necessarily going to be talking about careers and career development all the time, because they may not necessarily see that as a common goal. But when you relate it to learning outcomes or student development, the language tends to be something that they understand, that we are on the same page, and we're just all focused on helping students be successful.
Terrific, thanks, Christine. So it's I guess a matter of translating the activities of the Career Services Department into a language that the other stakeholders on campus can understand, as well as recognizing their expertise and trying to help work with them in a collaborative fashion. Some of the comments actually reminded me of something we heard from some of the interviews, and it's sort of captured in the question under sustained collaboration, and it was a number of people said, well, you can build partnerships or collaborations with various stakeholders on campus, like deans of faculties, for example, but given the turnover, whether it be by retirements or by promotion, sometimes there's a tremendous amount of work in maintaining those collaborations. As people change, then you often have to go back and sort of start over and say, okay, here's what we had with the previous dean, and can we continue that with the new dean? So there's some energy involved in doing that, in maintaining those or sustaining those collaborations. The next component, we've already spent a little bit of time talking about the notion of co-location, and there were a variety of institutions that responded on the survey to indicate how many services were in close proximity. And so we had, you can see most, the modal was 2 other services on campus, and there was a smaller number of 9 who had 4 or more other services in close proximity. So co-location seems to be a structural feature that can promote collaboration. So the next question is, are there specific competencies and resources or structures that facilitate collaboration? So over to Jan.
Okay, so just going back to one of the comments I made briefly of the last question, I think that the Career Center really has to be focused with a commitment to all students on the campus. And no favoritism is shown, and so I think that's really important. I think the development of expert knowledge is really important as well. So in the structure at Laurier, we have career consultants who have designated portfolios and are also generalists, but portfolios that include things like working with students with disabilities, working with international students, first-year students, graduate students. And so we really try to create the expertise and deliver programming accordingly. And in so doing, we create key contacts, which I think are really important as well, so that people know who to connect with on the campus and who can help them. Those people are also responsible for proactive engagement with departments. And I think, Peter, speaking to your comment about when different people leave, it's important that you get out there and be proactive about trying to engage the new folks who have arrived on campus. I think in terms of competency, there really has to be a spirit of collaboration that's important, and the territorialism doesn't exist. And the respect for others and what they can bring is also really important.
Great. Okay, Vicki.
I think a couple of additional things that come to mind are ensuring that we're also we're not just current on industry trends, but also on new academic programming that might be coming to the college. We're launching new programs in post-diploma certification in human services management, in creative technologies and digital marketing. So ensuring that the folks on our teams are also really aware of what's happening on the academic side and knowing how to address those new industries and making contacts with those employers as well. And understanding the unique recruitment and job search processes that might be involved for those students. I think the second piece of it is also creating a sense of autonomy within every member of the team in career services or student services, so that they feel empowered to go out and make those connections with different faculty, coordinators. We can certainly do a lot of work at the dean and the executive leadership level, but I think it's really, really key that there's a certain amount of autonomy within each member of the team to go out there and build those relationships with various stakeholders on campus and off campus.
Great, thanks, Vicki. Christine.
When I first looked at this question and was thinking about what competencies facilitate collaboration, the first thing that came to my mind was be a good listener. So this is something that many of us as career development practitioners came to our professions through a counseling or student development background or student affairs background. And so built into those programs is they're things that help us become a good listener. So I try to seek first to listen whenever I want to collaborate with someone, find out what their challenges are, try to understand where they're coming from, and then we seek to collaborate and work together on how we can come up with a solution or create a joint initiative, because that's often what ends up happening, is that we do find out that we can meet each other's needs, and then we come up with a new way to do that. So that was the first one I thought of. I also was thinking, use our student resources. So many of our offices do rely on student staff or student volunteers. And so for me, this has been an excellent bridge to our student union. So often when we want to try joint initiatives with the student union, I'll have my student career assistants connect with the student union. So they're often the first connecting factor in how we can work together. And then, I'll help them out with that. But we can only do so much ourselves as professionals. And I guess in my case, being that it's such a small office, that I really have no choice but to rely on those student assistants. So, they can do a lot, and it's good if we give them that experience as well.
Right. It's a win-win for everybody, right? And I guess overall, the comments remind me of a quote that I saw in the report as I was reviewing it the other day, which was folks from one campus said, we need to move from sort of going out and asking people, here's what we need, to saying, what do you need? And meeting those needs, trying to meet those needs as much as possible. So it's kind of a flip in terms of positioning of the service. Moving on to the last question, the notion of off-campus collaboration. So one institution said everything they do in terms of work experience is centralized. So their community services was located, again, this notion of co-location, campus services, employer services, everything was located in the one area, and that helped in terms of developing off-campus collaboration with other stakeholder groups like employers or secondary school guidance, etc. So the last question are, what are the opportunities for off-campus collaboration with community stakeholders? Jan?
So I think that there are many opportunities that exist. I think time becomes a key factor in terms of whether you can really develop those partnerships fully. But some of the ones that I think are good ones, clearly with employers, but I think looking at the needs of employers and the needs of our academic communities and how we might be able to integrate them around classroom-based projects is a good way to create partnerships there. And there's definitely a role for the Career Center with that. I think one of the other areas, and I'm not sure a lot is done in this area, is the whole area of volunteerism in the not-for-profit sectors within our communities. And I think doing some work there to create some partnerships are really good opportunities. We've worked with also several external organizations actually that work together on a program called Digital Innovation Skill Certificate. And it's for people who have graduated, both community members and people from the post-secondary sector who can benefit from enhancing their digital skills. And so we've done some work there with them by working with the class that they have around resume writing, interview skills, those types of things. We've partnered around areas related to students with disabilities. So a disabilities mentoring day that we do in conjunction with an external organization called Dolphin Technologies and with the March of Dime. Inline Connect partnerships around partnering. And then I think that there are also all kinds of partnerships that we can have with other post-secondary institutions. So whether we do joint fairs, and we do a lot of that here in the Waterloo-Wellington regions, doing collaborative outreach to employers to market our services, to bring them in. The It All Adds Up campaign, and there are many, many institutions across the country that are involved in that particular campaign. We all got together to promote that on our campuses, and so I think those types of opportunities exist as well.
Tremendous, thanks. Vicki.
We have a program at the college called BBC Cares, and that's volunteering in the community. So we partner up with community-based agencies to provide opportunities in volunteering that are related back to the programs that we offer at the college, and that those volunteer hours are tracked on a co-curricular record or a transcript for the students. So that's been one that's been really effective because it helps us to just to engage and connect back to the community as well. Employers are always a really, really huge group, of course, that we want to build collaborative partnerships with. But just in thinking of spaces where we could discover more partnerships is that we try to keep in touch with the Career Development Association of Alberta in our province. That's a community of career development practitioners, HR professionals, and folks who work in that realm, but in different industries. So that's been a really great space to learn about potential partnerships that may come up. And also just connecting with associations related to even like HR professionals. I think that's really key. Again, time and resource, of course, are always sometimes a barrier. But some of the effective programs that we've developed, like BBC Cares, comes from just taking time to make direct contacts with community stakeholders.
Oh, great comments, Vicki. Christine.
So I would echo looking at partnerships with employers. It seems to be the obvious one, and it's something that we look at it around our campus events and programming, inviting them to be guest speakers, even co-presenting workshops. So I've had them co-present networking workshops, for example. We collaborate locally outside the university with other local universities. I know some communities do this as well. We run the Halifax Career Fair with St. Mary's and Dalhousie universities. 20-year partnership, and it's something that is a win-win for the employers and the students because we put on a much larger event and a quality event that all of our students do benefit from. We also collaborate in looking at provincial initiatives. So we were able to seek funding last year for a position based on a provincial funding program. So we do look for those opportunities to collaborate as well. And, with high school guidance counselors, I know that was part of your question. We don't do a lot of collaboration directly with them, but we do have a symposium that takes place every year on our campus for guidance counselors from the province. And so looking for opportunities to present and share information and do roundtables where we can have discussions so that we can better understand the challenges they're facing with high school students, so what we're going to see coming into university, and they have a better understanding of what the issues are once they do arrive at university and how they can help them before they get here.
Terrific. Thanks, Christine. So it looks like there are many opportunities for collaboration, off-campus collaboration, including the not-for-profit sector and the volunteering sector. So that's tremendous. So that ends our conversation around the 5 questions, which I think was really excellent. Some great ideas related to the various aspects of the collaboration themes. So now we're open for questions or comments.
All right, it's Sharon back on the line from SAREC, and we do have several questions from our audience. The first is from Michelle, and this is directed at Jan. Michelle would like to know if you can share some examples of the topics that faculty or departments are asking for from career services when it comes to career integrated learning.
So it really depends on the faculty member. We've done things basic as resume writing and CV writing, further education opportunities for students within a particular discipline. We collaborate with the Department of Political Science on a series that they run around pursuing careers in law, other types of career opportunities that would exist for political scientists in the further ed area. We do a lot with type, and so we'll go into classes around that. We do things around career options by discipline and organize fairs, those types of things. And then the particular career integrated learning project that I mentioned was we go into the first class in a course and talk to students about what competencies are and how they're going to be developing them throughout the course. And then at the end of the course, we go back in and talk to them about, through a reflection process, around the kinds of competencies they developed based on the project work or the assignments that they've had in the class. And so that gives them a language that they can then take and be able to articulate to employers. We've had faculty members who've been very receptive to that, who have talked about modifying and have modified their courses so that the competency language has much more prominence. And it seems to resonate well with students, and students become much more engaged in the class as a result of it as well.
All right, thank you. And this next question from Jennifer is for any of the panelists, and that is, can you give any examples of collaboration activities specifically around international students?
I can take that question. So we've been working with our international office here on campus to develop a resource for international students that will help them market themselves more effectively, understand what local employers are looking for, and really takes them through all of the career development activities, but in a tailored format. So we're going to be launching that later this fall. And at the same time, we're also working with them on developing a resource for employers, because that's part of the challenge, is that employers don't always recognize the value in hiring international students. So in partnership with them, we'll be launching that later this fall. So watch for it on our website.
Thank you, Christine. And this next question is probably best directed at you, Peter. Diane wants to know if there was anything different that was learned in the research about collaboration in Quebec institutions in particular.
Not that I recall. We had a fairly substantial response from Quebec, but not huge. And nothing really stood out in terms of the collaboration. I mean, there's a slightly different structure, as I mentioned yesterday, in the Quebec system, in the sense that the services, the career services, are essentially bifurcated into two components, one being the front end, conseil d'orientation, and then the service de placement, which is the job placement or further education placement. I know, just based on my experience working in the CEGEP system, that there's a fair amount of collaboration with what they call the APIs, Aide Pédagogique Individuelle, as well as the career services on campus and the success services. When we did the website analysis, we found all of those components present there, but nothing stood out in terms of anything distinctly different.
All right, thank you, Peter. And I'll also add that later in the week, we do have André Raymond from Laval University, who's going to be one of our Career Center panelists, who can certainly speak to his experience at that institution. A question from Mike, and this is for anyone who wants to take it. How is the gig economy being addressed within post-secondary career programs today?
I think I can start, I guess. I think we definitely we're speaking to students about it, and I think just helping them to prepare for a more flexible job search and really minding expectations in terms of what's out there when they do graduate, and really working with students long before they graduate to understand the different types of work arrangements that might be out there for them when they graduate.
Anyone else have anything they wanted to add on gig economy?
I was just going to say, in terms of, and I mentioned this a little bit yesterday in the overview of our findings, when we looked at what services are offered by career services departments, one of the things that was a bit surprising was that the entrepreneurship workshops were fairly low in terms of the frequency of those being offered. Now, that said, of course, the number of services, as if people recall, that career service departments do offer is enormously extensive. So adding something else, and I know that a lot of the business schools offer the entrepreneurship type courses, but I sort of expected a little bit more in terms of entrepreneurship workshops.
All right, thank you. And we do have quite a few more questions, but probably time for just one more. And this one is directed at Jan. Carol wants to know if you can give some examples of how your career service attracts new students.
We try to be everywhere that we possibly can in terms of new students. So Certainly in the residences, that's a great place for us to start. About over 3,000 of the 4,500 students that come in each year to Laurier as incoming students live in residence, and so we do a fair amount of outreach activity there, and we have great support from the residence life staff. But we do all the traditional things that probably every campus is involved in terms of orientation sessions, orientation fairs, publications. We also use the Orbis system at Laurier, and so have access to be able to drive emails out to different groups. And so we do that. We actually have a monthly newsletter that goes out to every student on campus so they can become aware of the kinds of services that we offer. We also do that for graduating students every week. But and so we use electronic, like social media, and partnership programming wherever we have the ability to do that. And certainly with groups like our writing center, we work with the peers there so that they can be referring students to us. So there's a wide variety.
All right, well, that brings us to our time. Any final comments, Peter?
I'd just like to thank all the panelists. That was a tremendous conversation, fireside chat. We didn't have a fire going, but we had a lot of conversation, which was great. Very great, really good ideas from everybody. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, let me add my thanks to that. Thank you, Peter, as well as Jan, Vicky, and Christine. So as mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will email you a link to the recording of this webinar along with a copy of the slides from today and all of the webinars on Friday at the conclusion of the full series. And after the final installment, we will also send you out a short evaluation form, and we would greatly value your feedback. We are back tomorrow taking a look at the theme of intervention with the career service leaders at Ryerson University, Fanshawe College, and Simon Fraser University. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.